Woohoo! We are live. This is Math 75, and this is the practice test for Chapter 2. Moving forward, all of the tests will be multiple choice, so this will be a little bit different than the previous tests. But I have printed out for everyone that you can download if you'd like. I've written up all of the problems so that you can work on them on paper, and hopefully you've given them a try already. I encourage you to write out the solutions to your problems while you're taking the actual test, even though it is online. A lot of these will take significant work. It's not something I'm expecting you can do in your head. So just because it's online and multiple choice does not mean it should be easy and simple. I do think that this test will take a good half hour to an hour for most folks, unless you really just are feeling really comfortable and you've really studied hard. Then it could go a little faster. So I'm going to go ahead and get started for this test. Now for the practice test, you are allowed unlimited tries, unlimited time. For the actual test, which will look just like the practice test, you get 90 minutes. You're also allowed to have a scientific calculator, so I suggest you have one. I also encourage you to, bring in your support network to help you out, not to actually tell you the answers, but to be there to say, yay, and maybe bring you snacks if you start flagging a bit. So let's get started. The first problem, 10 points. This is going to be almost purely review. This is the quadratic formula. So I'm going to give you this equation, 2x squared plus 6x equals 24. And I'm asking you to solve this quadratic equation using the quadratic formula, which you should have memorized. And then the interesting thing is, I have to work on this wording. It won't say type the radicand. It'll say select the radicand, the number inside the square root, into the blank below. This is multiple choice. So you're going to have different choices, and what you're going to do is select the correct one. I'll change that on the test. Select. Woohoo! So in order to use quadratic formula, remember you need a 0 on the right-hand side. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract 24 from both sides. 2x squared plus 6x minus 24 equals 0. Now, some of you might notice that I could factor out a 2 or divide both sides by 2. This will not be true of all the problems on the test. Whenever I write tests, I write between 3 and 6 different versions of each problem. So everyone doesn't have the same test, because that would be boring. And most of them, you will not be able to divide anything out. So I'm not going to do it here. However, if you do see that you can divide by a number like 2 in this case, I would encourage you to go ahead and do that if you know how to do that. But I'm just going to ignore it. I'm going to go ahead and do the quadratic formula straight up, because that will totally work too. So I'll remind you, the quadratic formula looks like this. The opposite of b plus or minus b squared minus 4ac all over 2a, and that equals x. So I'm going to go ahead and let's get some. I've got 2, which is my a, and then 6, which is my b, and then negative 24, which is my c. That only appears once. So I'm going to get the opposite of 6 plus or minus radical 6 squared minus 4 times 2 times negative 24 all over 2 times 2. So let me go through and identify. There's my a. There's my B, and there's my C right there. Okay, so let's keep going. Negative 6 plus or minus radical 36, and then I'm going to use the calculator. I could probably do it in my head, but negative 4 times negative 24, those will end up with 2 minuses make a plus. So this is going to be a positive. And then I can just multiply the numbers without signs. 4 times 2 times 24 is 192. So I get -6 plus or minus radical, and I get 192 plus 36 gives me 228, which all over 4. Now, you got to be really careful with these problems. Math teachers are sneaky. Some might even say evil. I don't know if we're evil, maybe a little evil. Notice that 228 is definitely there as an answer, but is it the correct answer? Sneaky math teachers, seriously. Oh, man, I don't know who wrote this test. They were mean. So I want to note something up here. Let's see, I haven't used blue. Let me put a box around it. This word right here. It says, and then simplify. So what does that mean? Well, it means that the expectation is, as you come down here, you need to simplify what's in the radicand. So here I'm going to go ahead, rewrite it up here. -6 plus or minus radical 228 all over 4. And then I'm going to say, okay, radical 228, I bet I can simplify that. So I got to think of how can I simplify it? And here I'm going to be using bare math, where basically you take the 228 and you break it down into its different component parts. For example, I noticed that 228, I think it's divisible by 4. Let me check. Divided by 4 is 57. Okay, 4 is 2 times 2. 57. Now, 57 is a sneaky one. I happen to know that one's divisible by 3 because I hate it being divisible by 3. So it's like my own personal bête noire, which means black beast or hideous number that should not be composite. It should be prime. We should just all agree that 57 should be prime and we just leave it alone. No one should multiply 3 times 19. Let's be honest. However, if I write this out, 2 times 2 times 3 times 19, this is just the square root part. My 2's can go running in bare math. And 1 makes it out. The 3 and the 19 can't come out, so they're stuck inside. So then I get 2 on the outside and 57 on the inside. So for my fraction here, I've got -6 plus or minus 2 radical 57 all over 4. Now I can simplify this further, but I can also notice that in the actual problem, what I'm interested in is the radicand, what's inside the radical. So what is inside the radical here is 57. See, what color did I not use? I didn't use orange yet. So this number is the one I'm looking for. And in fact, I see here 57. So I want to select 57. Now, for those of you who are curious, we can go further with this. I'll remind you that we can factor out a 2 up top. And it's 2 times the quantity -3 plus or minus radical 57 all over 4. And then I can bring in my red pen, cancel, and I get -3 plus or minus radical 57 all over 2. And that would be my final answer. If I were writing this out on a traditional test, I would write that. But for this one, I'm just interested in the radicand. Okay, so make sure you are familiar with that word. The word radicand means the thing inside the square root. So you notice that I'm sneaky twice. I did put the wrong answer there. Wahaha. And then also, I am asking you for the radicand, not just the straight up answer, so that you can't just type this into a calculator and get the answer without doing the work. So the goal is to encourage everyone to actually do the work. Woohoo! Okay, so that's number 1. 10 points done. Yay! Number 2, this is the big one. This has the most points. Pardon me for a second. Let me get this all straightened out. Number 2, you get a bunch of information. As usual, X is the number of units produced and sold. That's the way it always is. C of X, the cost, is 25X plus 300. So I'm giving you the cost, so you don't have to build that. But I'm only giving you the demand equation. P equals 120 minus X. So the price is 120 minus the number of units we want to sell. I want to find the levels of production that will yield a profit of 750. So I've got the cost. I need the revenue. So that I can find profit is revenue minus cost. So how do I find the revenue? Well, over here, if I have the demand equation, I happen to know that revenue is price times output. So this is little p. Remember, there are lots of p's running around. This is capital P. I know it's a little hard to see, but you can kind of see this is dropped down a little bit smaller. I actually draw my lowercase p and my uppercase p a little differently. My uppercase p is a lot more flamboyant. You know, there are little things. I've got p of x to try to distinguish them. So I've got 120 minus x times x. This is just like what you did on the homework. 120x minus x squared, and that's my revenue. Okay, so that was woohoo. So I now know that revenue is that. So if I want my profit, that's going to be 120x minus x squared. There's my revenue. Sorry, revenue. Do revenue in green. There we go. And I'm going to do my costs in pink. This seems appropriate. My cost was given to me, 25x plus 300. Now, make sure, now here I'm doing this practice test so you can feel familiar with the problems ahead of time and not be surprised by anything. But notice that in the, sorry about that, sometimes when you're taking a test, your support group can feel a little bit left out. I don't mean to leave you guys out. There you go. So in the homework, sometimes you had to create your cost function. Notice that I'm telling you right here, I'm giving you the cost function. So you don't have to multiply by X. Cost is done. So you just copy it straight from there. Cost comes right from here. There you go. Okay. So let's go ahead and there's my profit. I get 120x minus x squared minus 25x minus 300. Okay, a lot of things running around. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and combine like terms. And I'm going to get that my profit is equal to the opposite of x squared. I've got just one of those. I got 120x minus 25x, which is going to give me plus 95x, and then minus 300. Okay, there's my profit. So I got my profit function. And now what it says is up here, it says, find the levels of production, so find X, that will yield a profit of 750. Okay, so profit needs to be equal to 750. Okay, easy peasy. This is not that different from the first problem. It's going to boil down, because this chapter 2 is all about quadratics. So this boils down to doing a bunch of quadratic formulas and a bunch of quadratic equations. I'm going to subtract 750 from both sides. Why is that? Well, because I need to start off with a 0, right? You need a 0 to use the quadratic formula. Okay, so I bring the 750 over. Good, good. This should look up very familiar. You had a couple homework problems just like this. And now I have to solve for X. And what I'll tell you is, although it looks like it should, factor really nicely, it doesn't quite. The answers are not exact. So you'll see up here in the problem, I say, round your answers to the nearest whole unit. So that's kind of a hint that you're welcome to try to factor it, but it will not factor, I believe. So I'm going to use the quadratic formula. X equals the opposite of 95 plus or minus radical 95 squared minus 4 times A times C all over 2A. Okay, that's brutal, but ta-da, we get a calculator, so that's awesome. So let me go ahead and, sorry about the bright light. Let me copy this over to my handy dandy note paper. Negative 95 plus or minus 95 squared minus 4 times negative 1 times negative 1050 all over 2 times negative 1. Negative 95 plus or minus. And, you know, everyone's got their own way of doing this. So you could do it piecemeal. Or you could do this all at once. I could say 95, the quantity squared, minus 4 times the opposite of 1 times the opposite of 1050 gives me 4825. Now, you may not want to do it all at once. You may want to do 95 squared separately and negative 4 times negative 1 times negative 1050. You could do that separately. It's up to you, whatever makes the most sense. All over negative 2. So I've got two answers, negative 95 plus radical 4825 all over negative 2, or negative 95 minus radical 4825 all over negative 2. Oh, this is so much fun. Oh, I'm so glad we're doing math today. Don't you agree? Woohoo. Now, there are fancy ways to do this. I'm going to do it in the most boring way possible, I think. I'm going to do negative 95 plus, I'm using radical right there, 4825. I calculated the numerator first, and then I'm going to divide by negative 2, and I get 12.76. What is that? 889, some other things. Okay, and then I'm going to work on this one. Negative 95 minus radical 4825 divided by negative 2. And this one becomes 82.23 and some other things. Okay, so I got my two answers. So let's go back and let's see. And I see that I don't see these answers as, am I going to be able to do this? There we go. I don't see these answers as possibilities here. And then I notice I have to round. Did I use yellow already? Not yet. So always pay attention to the sneaky, like, especially with multiple choice problems, you want to make sure you pay attention to all the sneaky words, because this one wants us to round it. 12.76 gets rounded to 13. 82.23 gets rounded to 82. So there are my two answers, 13 and 82. And I take a look here, and yes, indeed, 13 and 82 are my two options. Now, if you got 82 and 13, can you write 13 and 82? Absolutely. These two, the order of these two doesn't matter. The order how I wrote it down, it's just the two different answers. Okay, woohoo, that's number 2. We're done with 30 points. Oh my gosh, this is so exciting. We're on the last page, yay! I'm so happy. Okay, number 3, 15 points. Given the following demand equation, find the price that will maximize revenue for this product. Round to the nearest dollar. Now, this one is deceptively simple. I put it on the test because I found a lot of people were really struggling with this in the homework, and I wanted to give you a really great reason to study it, because this problems like it come up a lot. Here, I'm going to bring my support family closer to me, my Godzilla and my Dancy guy, Dancy Apple guy. I love him. Okay, so I wanted to give you a really good reason, a good excuse to memorize this and really get familiar with the way that economics problems and business problems tend to be very tricksy, just like math teachers, very tricksy. So let's take a look at this. Let's just work through it. It's not horrible, except at the end, it can be a little bit misleading. Okay, so I'm supposed to find the price that will maximize revenue for this product. So revenue, I need to know revenue, but I don't know it. I do, however, know there's the demand equation. So that's price versus output. So I could go ahead and multiply price times X. So in other words, 400 minus 5X times X. And I would get 400X minus 5X squared. Or if I want to write it prettily, R of X equals negative 5X squared plus 400X. Now, as I look at that, this revenue, that's a parabola. It opens downward. And so the vertex would be the maximum. And so I want to find the maximum revenue, so I should look at the vertex. So the vertex, X equals the opposite of B over 2A, which in this case is the opposite of 400 all over 2 times negative 5. So that's negative 400 all over negative 10 equals 40. And you'll notice that 40 is one of the options. But then you're going to remember, wait a minute, this teacher is really tricky. Again, evil? Hard to tell, but tricky, yes. So is 40 the answer? Let's look at the problem again. Given the following demand equation, find the price. This is an output. So how do we find the price? The price is equal to 400 minus 5 times the output, which is 400 minus 5 times, in this case, 40. This is my output right there. That's why I put that in there. And so this is how I actually get the price. 400 minus 200 equals 200. Notice that I very sneakily did not include units. If I had included units, you would know that this is 40 units, while this is $200. And that's what we were looking for. So does that make sense? And again, if I just said something, you're like, whoa, what even happened there? Talk to me. Ask me questions. Ask the tutors questions, right? Make sure you understand this before you go into this test. Okay, so just be really careful. I am sneaky. I will give you options for answers that I know are not correct. So just because an answer appears as an option does not mean it's correct. Okay, last problem. This one's going to go pretty fast because I'm actually not going to tell you what the last problem is. The thing is if I told you the last problem, it's 5 points, so it's not a big one. But a lot of people would just memorize how it goes, and I don't want you to memorize it. I'd like you to actually understand it. So let's talk about it. This problem will involve matching economic terms with their graphing counterparts. And we've talked about these in the videos. We talk about these in the written assignment for chapter 2, if you finished that. So the things that will appear on the test, I am telling you what will appear: profit, revenue, costs, break-even points, fixed costs, maximum profit, maximum revenue, vertex, output, x-intercepts, y-intercepts, x-axis, y-axis. Now, not all of those will be part of the answers. And hopefully already you're thinking things like, oh, well, the break-even points. Well, the break-even points on our picture were just the x-intercepts, right? So you already can say, oh, wait, I know break-even points would be the x-intercepts. And that's basically what you're going to be asked to do, given a graph. So the problem with multiple choice is I can't have you graph something with multiple choice. So I was trying to think, how do I create a problem that will have you thinking about a graph without you being able to actually turn in a graph. So this was my closest approximation. And I know I can hear you're all saying, thank you. Oh my goodness. And I'm like, you're welcome. That's what I'm here for, to make your life extra full of math. So what is the problem going to be like? Well, if you look at the practice test online, you'll see that each of the words on the left, so I'll give you a list of words on the left, there will be a bunch of options on the right. And so for x-axis, you'll scroll and you'll be like, okay, what is x-axis? And the x-axis is the horizontal axis. So you would select, oh, okay, the x-axis goes with the horizontal axis. The y-axis goes with the vertical axis. So if it's an example. But what you'll actually be working with are these concepts. I think that's all the concepts. I think I wrote them all down. I may have missed a couple, but they will all be concepts from graphing that you have used. So these will not be brand new. I won't have you, I won't ask you any questions about anything I haven't talked about. So that's the whole test. It's 50 points. 10 and then 20, which is 30, and then 15 is 45, and then 5 is 50. And then there's an extra credit. Make sure you answer the extra credit so I can give you the 1 point of extra credit. And hopefully this test goes better than the other tests have gone. Again, you can only take the test once. So if you have questions, please ask me before you start the test. Woohoo, woohoo, you guys are awesome. Math on, guys. Good luck on the test.